So, welcome to this episode of Tea at the Temple. Oh my goodness, you are in for a treat, because joining us is the incredible Elen Elenna, the author of The Silver Wheel, the Lost Deerskin book, and a Shamanic Elven Ascension guide for our times, grounding the truth back into reality, back into the hearts of every sovereign being through all her work. And we have some the most incredible conversations with her.
Yeah, she brings forward such deep soul medicine for us all, and delivered in the most eloquent way. It is truly, truly beautiful, and such an honor to be in her presence. So it'd be wonderful if you would join us. So go and make yourself your favorite brew, get settled down, and join us for our next episode at Tea at the Temple. We'll see you there. Well, welcome, beautiful souls, to our next episode at Tea at the Temple. And Rachel and I are so honoured to welcome the incredible Elen Elenna, who is joining us for our episode today. It is such an honour to have you in our space, and we are really excited, aren't we, to bring Elen forward.
So excited. And Elen is an author and a Shamanic Elven Ascension guide. And we are obviously in awe of that. I work quite closely with Elen, so I know about her work, but our community are just dying to hear about your path, about your wisdom, and all you share in this world, in this lifetime. So we're going to start off with a question that we ask all our guests. What brought you to this path?
Yeah, and of course it's so many things, isn't it? It's feeling in with every moment, like what's real right now to share of that. And wow, my ears just went as I said that. So it's a real listening. And yeah, what led me to this path? I think in a way it goes back to one moment for me, the moment when the shift moment. You could layer so many things back, but I was, when I was about 20 or so, a student at Oxford studying classics, so ancient Greek and Latin, but completely atheist, utterly, in my mind, very imaginative, but not switched on in any way like this. And yeah, I was walking in the parks one day there in my first term, dressed in a bright yellow dress, walking through the parks, and with a group of friends, we were going down to the river to have a picnic, and this old lady called me from her park bench, and she had this Eastern European accent. I looked over and she was all clad in green and had this green beret, deepest brown eyes, so beautiful. And she said, "I love your dress." She said, "Come and sit with me, I'm going to show you my drawings." And she had all of these papers laid out on her knee, and they were drawings of the great trees that were overarching the paths there, and the birds. And she said to me, it was so simple, but she said, just gazing into my eyes so intensely, and she said, "They're my friends, they speak to me." And it was the transmission of her whole being. I knew that she was in a reality that I had come to believe was mythical, or at the edge of things, that wasn't a real possibility. And it was as though as she spoke to me, everything altered, and instead it was I who felt unreal. I felt like I was kind of made of cardboard pieces, just as though given that glimpse all at once that my being was just a composite composed of things I'd put together to call a self, and wasn't real at that level at all. And then I think I went back to my university rooms after this encounter, and I had a night of just being illuminated throughout my whole being. And I saw that the whole path I was walking was actually my grandfather's and my father's dream. I saw my grandfather's spirit going past the window, and I remember just apologizing to him deeply that I couldn't carry on with walking and living his dream as my own, and kind of handing it back, as it were. But that set everything in motion, but in a kind of kaleidoscopic and catastrophic way also, because I had no idea how to be who I was. I just knew it was like that mystic light of self called, and of an earth that existed, a mystic interconnected earth and an expression of who we are. So yeah, I set off on a great trail from that moment forward, things like shaving off all my hair, giving all my clothes to charity shops, like deconstructing who I had become at every single level, moving to the hills of Wales and undergoing, I think, what was a very, deep psychological breakdown, really. And, because I didn't know how to navigate, I'd wanted to be one with creation again, one in that place that I'd seen Zoe, as I learnt her name was, inhabiting, but I didn't have the peace inside me to be there. I was just filled with neurotic voices speaking to me. You're a dropout. Because I left Oxford in response to this. Just all these negative voices tearing my consciousness apart from different directions. And all the while trying to be this mystic. I'd moved to the hills of Wales, sitting with the trees and the flowers. I couldn't hear or feel almost anything, maybe brief moments. And yeah, it was actually a very loving partner who'd come with me to the hills of Wales, and he was interested in psychology and psychotherapy. He was training, and we'd been looking for someone to train with out there. And he said, I think you might need to see someone. It might help. He found me in my deepest kind of desperation. I was getting more and more neurotic. I couldn't walk down the street. I had no sense of self. It's like I was just fragments flying apart in the wind. And yeah, there was this flyer. In short, it was this encounter with a psychotherapist who she was also a priestess of Avalon, and she had undergone the priestess training with the goddess. And as I entered the little antechamber of her therapy room, there were all these leaflets like priestess of Avalon going off in a barge, and I was like, oh my goodness, people actually do that. It's not just in fiction books. I'd read The Mists of Avalon. I read voraciously so much, and I was so magnetized but so frightened, and I didn't mention any of that to her. I just went in and started having the sessions, and eventually so I did begin to speak to her of those things much later on, and started exploring my own shamanic path and remembering. But that was what set me forward. It was that initial encounter and the breakdown, really, the deep breakdown, and beginning to feel, as I was led to feel my emotions again, which I'd avoided for a long time, to begin to feel what I really felt about anything, which was so odd to be real in any moment, so strange to give expression to that, and began to trek into what I really felt, what I really loved, and that there was this shining dimensionality that moved through me in a calling to the fairy, a calling to the elven, as I later discovered, within the light of my own being, and beginning to trust that, just to follow that calling a whisper at a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is just, I love how Zoe had presented, and that just is this vision of green and just invited you into her world. Yes. And that was like the catalyst for everything that you have, blossomed into and created, and now share your beautiful sacred offerings with everybody else. I mean, that is a profound and beautiful journey. And I just think,
and the deconstruction to rebuild literally from, like you say, nothing. You were like fragments on the wind, and that piecing together, that process, and that is the process that many of us on the spiritual path go through, isn't it? That deconstruction, so we can be restructured and we can transfigure into the version of ourselves that is the most resonant in that moment. And that changes, doesn't it, from moment to moment as the energies shift and change. It'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on what is rising in sort of the global collective energy of that transfiguration into sovereignty, because it really is such a strong vibration present there.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is. And it's so interesting. And I think it's wondrous and it's heartbreaking as we go through it, because it's as though our dreams and our sense of self were all interconnected in this vast network where we had to, where we drew energy off one another. I think that's so much how it's been, you know, whether it's affirmation and approval, or we do things for others, and, you know, or whether it's that we are also being sort of sourced from, and, you know, and our energy given to things that we don't love, but that draw our energy. And we sort of are on this huge awakening, as you say, to serenity, and that means letting go of all of that, which is also heartbreaking to think, oh my gosh, all along the calling in coming to this earth was to be the one who I truly am. That is what she longs for, that is what she calls for, and that was the invitation from the very, very beginning, never anything else. So it can be a sense of, well, maybe wasted time too, all sorts of sorrow and grief that happens, I think. And even in this present moment, I have that, as I see so many crystalline souls awakening and knowing that they're called to be themselves, to be that which shines from within them in that deepest truth, and who are not going through all of the veils, you know, not going through all of the veils and the delays and the false versions of self and all of that. But it's I think, a very, that freedom strikes the heart, and it can also unveil ancient layers of, you know, we can feel envy and jealousy, wanting to hide our light. We can feel so envious of those who are sharing it. We can feel all kinds of really heavy things as that lifts off us, you know. There's a lot of all of that, and because the calling to serenity, it exists beyond all of those layers, underneath all of that. But at the same time, it is the rising light of the dawn, and all of that, I think, is burning away in these fiery mists, as with the dawn, you know, when that rising mist off the land, as the dew rises, and we sense our freedom again. We sense who we really are, and the calling to this crystalline unfoldment of ourselves. And it's a very, very beautiful thing, but it's also a lot to carry our power again, to carry the power, the light, the truth of who we are. We're sort of getting the hang of it. It kind of comes in and out, like, wow. And there are layers of things that support us. Like for me, I studied Reiki for a time and moved through that, and different, I think, Munai Ki trainings in this beautiful South American shamanic rites, and layers that gradually, though, moved me into those sovereign crystalline star DNA and elven codes of my being, and learning to carry that within my body here, and to know that authentically, even in this interview, to actually be present from that layer of myself is like an exploration. As you said, Rachel, it's like, you know, it's always kind of presenting, uniquely configuring within every moment. So yeah, within the collective, that I think there's a great, almost like sorrowful shaking off as well of all of the density and the oppression we felt of each one within ourselves. And I think people need as much support as possible to move through that, because it can be quite weighty on the heart, and to let those layers lift, all of the support to keep orienting. And what the Elven have so said to me is, like, because the transfiguration is so immense, and it's so quantum though, because every one cell of our being holds the entirety, if you like, of the pattern of who we are. We could focus on any one of those, and its transfigurative potential is infinite. It can change its pattern, transform into the infinite design of who we truly are. And that is, as you say, Rachel, it's an evolutionary expression, you know, to dance with the star codings of who we truly are. And as the Elven have been saying to me, it's like, yes, a lot lifts off with that as that cellular reconfiguration takes place, but all we need to do really for that to happen is to rest in the beauty of who we are, you know, over and over again. Keep remember what we love, what really lights us up. Keep calling in that frequency to rest, to bathe in it as much as possible. And it's by that the cells all transfigure, and we start really being expressive of that serenity. So I think, for each one, it's like a calling to really chase up what we love and to follow those filaments and to be in that frequency.
What an eloquent way of really bringing that and describing that for us, Ellen, because it can be so intense, and everything I feel we've been talking about this week is just unfolding and happening at such a rapid rate. And I just love that, just rest in the beauty of all that you are, just rest into that and come into those practices and things that light you up, and just allow that to permeate every cell of your being, and just be in your frequency, in your energy. And that just, it makes my heart sing just thinking about that. And I think when you think of it like that, it just makes it more achievable, doesn't it? Like, just do the things that light you up. I think we can overcomplicate things, and that's just resting the beauty of who you are
and allowing ourselves to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Becoming comfortable with sitting with you. And I feel like for me that has been one of my biggest challenges, is to come back to me, because it's funny, I've been writing this week about sacred service and how people often perceive it's something you project outside of yourself. And I've been sort of like pondering the idea that actually it's about how you actually bring that sacred service to the self, and how you actually come into that energy of being in the heart, being within you, serving what lights your heart up first, before then you can radiate out and share your wisdom. And it's such a shift, because we are so imprinted, aren't we, by how society has been in the past, that we go through those waves in and out of that sort of, I'm in the imprint, I'm in my sovereignty. And it's like this roller coaster of being and becoming that which is around you. And that can be quite jarring, can't it?
Yeah, it really can. It really can.
Yeah, because of our profound sensitivity and sentience. I mean, for me, the greatest learning is still how not to, without realizing, absorb frequency around me and move out of that serenity. I certainly have no conscious intention to do that any longer, but it fascinates me. It's like how easily I can don or cloak myself, you know, call in another energy, like dance it into my being. And it's a long habit, if you like. And so, you know, for those of us who are really sensitive, it's like even discerning that, I feel like it's getting more subtle. I'm getting better at it. The veiling is it's always quite close now to my essence. Like it's much a finer veiling. But now I'm noticing, you know, that if I walk, it's like anything less than that really wonderful, totally sovereign, far out light of that which we truly are is really unsupported now. So we feel pretty terrible. I mean, we don't feel just kind of a little bit bad or okay-ish, you know, like we used to when we were out of, you know, core crystalline frequency. I find I feel really terrible if I'm out of it. So it's, but by the opposite side of the coin, it's like when we're in it, there is this amazing sense of peace. So I'm sometimes wondering, you know, as I play and I dance in this field, you know, even down to the clothes I wear and things like this, like, wow, whereas in the past I might have thought it served people, like it's better for people around me if I dial it down a bit, if I'm not fully expressive of exactly that which I am, if I just merge slightly, you know, absorb a bit of frequency, just dial it down. It's like it doesn't actually support anything. It all falls apart very quickly if I do that. So actually just more and more called to, you know, really be very direct. And with that, there comes this incredible sense of peace and amplification of the field. And so it's a very interesting dance to be in and to experiment with. But I think you're right, you know, the conditioning that, you know, to allow this beauty. And I feel like I reach thresholds and I think, oh, maybe that's enough now. Maybe I should stop. It's like, I keep like, no, you know, just like we keep expanding to rest more into this because more of it's arriving here. That's the thing. The threshold keeps altering and it might get a bit funny for a bit as then, you know, we meet parts of ourselves that have dialed back, that out of deep fear or defenses or whatever it is, have made agreements within us to not be ourselves. And as we come to new bits of that, it can get really tender for a while, really tender and feel very destabilizing because they're being asked to do something else. You know, parts that have become and adapted so far out of being that light And it's like very tender to hold them now as they present within us, you know, and it can feel, the ego can feel really wobbly at those times, make us feel really insecure all over again about who we are and very unstable. And just to gently know that there's a part presenting in the light of the dawn now that is ready to integrate, but you're going to need to be really present to that very fragile bit now that's being called into this light, and let them heal, let them rest into this beauty, let them feel it. And then there's the reunification, and even more of this reality is here. Then the parameters are continuously expanding. So yeah, it's a shifting scene also. It's always changing.
So much air in that.
Yeah.
When you're speaking of it, your whole vessel just fills up with that fresh air that you breathe in on a mountaintop.
Yeah.
It's just, that is how you feel when you are absolutely in that energy.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to have that.
It's so refreshing.
Yeah, it really is really refreshing. So both of us are really familiar with your book, The Silver Wheel, aren't we? Look.
I bought one just in case we need it.
Oh, it's just really a really beautiful book, Ellen. And, you know, for all of our listeners and viewers that are watching this, it's very apparent how eloquent and such a wordsmith that Ellen is, and your book is truly beautiful. So just for those of the watching and listening to this who haven't heard or read The Silver Wheel, how would you explain and describe it to those who are new to this and the teachings of this book?
Yeah. Well, that was a mystery I found myself approaching for many years, wondering exactly that myself, because it really arrived as a mystery. And through that awakening experience, it was very much what was beginning to call me, you know, was summoning me back to the land of Wales through that encounter with Zoe, that awareness that there was something else within me, and that it was very, very linked to the earth and her own being. And yeah, so the Silver Wheel, to go right back. So yeah, I did, in the end, when I went to Wales, I did an English degree and was able to study quietly in the hills while also on my mystical and healing journey within myself. And I always knew I had books to write. There was never a question. I was born to a family of publishers, and from the earliest time I was busy making books, you know, when you use your stapler to pin them together and you put your cover together with the words. And so I was always a writer, but I was completely, you know, thought it would be intellectual, like kind of, I loved postmodern feminist writers and Virginia Woolf and all of these kind of books that explored very poetically feminine consciousness and an awareness of the earth, but it was like an exploration of a mystic but fragmented and quite intellectual state of being, you know, exploring that, but very much in that way. So that was my aspiration, was to write in that way, very much so. But I knew it was the voice of the earth, and to listen, it's like the feminine moment of what we experience when we're with the earth and feeling her presence. And I felt, even from that kind of slightly more fragmented state, how she was more beyond the veils than ever we have conceived. And so I felt the Silver Wheel as her voice calling me, and the voice of a lost reality. And as I listened and as I walked my shamanic path, I began to feel how it was the voice of an interdimensional remembrance, and the voice of, especially, I began listening to the crystals and to the sense that there was a record, a library of light within the earth herself, of that longed to be translated, and that in essence that library was speaking to me in the voice of the dawn, of a great dawn of light, of life that is arising once more, of a reunion of realms, of dimensions of earth that are returning, of luminous golden architectures, and how so many are born upon the earth. Elders, if you like, those who remember, as it says, you know, the shining ones, those who wear the swan feather cloak, who remember those shining architectures of an interdimensional earth that is continuous and limitless with, as we know, those galaxies, stars beyond, and that is reforming, reforging right now in a great and luminous dawn. And that is the essence of the wisdom within Silver Wheel. And it's woven, of course, with the ancient. I felt I was listening simultaneously to a far past, because it reconnected this future, and the earth that is incoming of the new earth, of this luminous architectures, is continuous with great ages of light that have been before. And as we rise into that frequency, what's amazing is we're remembering this vast continuum with what has been before. So as I listened to the Silver Wheel, I was shown this book lying in a forest clearing. Eventually it kind of culminated. There was, along my journey, this vision of the Silver Wheel in its book form, that I was meant to share, holding this wisdom, and that it was within, wrought with the gold and the silver, the sapphire inks of the Elven, written therein, a prophecy of light written during the age of Lemuria, but for this time now, created in a sacred grove, that then, and the book then placed into the seventh dimension of Venus until this time. And my own journey of awakening was all part of being star-seeded here to, as, if you like, that I am an expression of the Silver Wheel, as many of us are. I knew it was a voice that was beyond myself, but I'm part of that consciousness, to bring that through. And as the timing became right in my awakening process, the book was restored to my awareness, and I knew I was meant to translate it into the language of this world, which is, I think, why I seeded myself here through a publishing family, through a study of languages, ancient and so forth, but really to translate what existed in Elven remembrance of Earth, you know, before we spoke in this language. And so it's, the Silver Wheel is that deerskin book. It was clad in white deerskin as I found it lying in the forest clearing, and, you know, literally a time capsule. So it took me ages to understand all of this, because I felt it's ancient, it's of the future, of the age to come. And I could feel the flows of the information. The architecture was within it was of both. It was very confusing, as well as a continuous surrender. Just, okay, a bit at a time. I'll just like listen through the phases of the moonlight. So it took me 10 years just listening and receiving, like a vision, a glimpse at a time, and piecing together this great tapestry.
Wow. So for anybody who hasn't read it, you need to give yourself quite a significant amount of time. In my experience, I mean, I'm only halfway through it.
Yes.
Still, and I might have had it for maybe about 4 or 5 years.
So
something like that.
So powerful.
It is. And I keep coming back to the chapter you mentioned about the beautiful swan elders, because that part, when they come in their beautiful canoes with their beautiful swan feathers, that was something within me that triggered a remembrance.
Yes.
And it's flowing through that and allowing that then to awaken in all the cells of your being, so that then you can flow into the next version of you. Because it's like all of us come, and we've spoken of this before, we come with keys and codes for one another. We come with a beautiful sacred soul vow to many of our soul family. You know, there's so many families of light, there's so many like starseed nations that we have been woven into. We come and we gift those keys back to our brethren, so to speak. And that this is what the Silver Wheel is to me. It's like this sacred communion with parts of myself that I'd long forgotten, but I'm so heartened and grateful and filled with love that I have never had for myself before touching it. It's just, it's like it's a fulfillment for me. So I'm only on about the fourth sigil in the book, and I'm savoring every moment. And obviously I'm weaving into your beautiful community, and what that'd be gorgeous to hear about the teachings that come through your offerings that are obviously of this earth, that people can actually access, you know, if they'd like to know more and work with you more.
Well, my great love is that journey of remembrance, and literally that we are in this continuum of accessing these shining architectures of those far ages of light, but also of the future that we're carrying. And as you say, we carry the keys, the codes. We are awakening one another, and I love to hold shamanically. So my way is with the drum and with the elven starlight sounding, the elven language, and guided journeys, but very much so that each one continues to retrieve these beautiful sovereign codes of remembrance, both ancient and future, of the celestial, the immortal starlight, of that which we are, that I am presence in source, that is interwoven with these crystalline streams, multidimensional. And I believe for each one of us, we are in an exquisite sequencing of that awakening. So I love to hold a container. I do that with the Elven Aurora and Elven Aurora membership, which is like a journey each week. But really, it's like holding liquid light ascension transmissions with the intention that each one is continuously, transparently synchronizing with that aspect of our greater self that is arriving and returning right now. That is really in awareness, because we do hold all the keys for ourselves right now. It's so amazing. But to have the moment in our lives where we're able to drop into that layer and feel it, because on the surface it can feel very crazy. If we kind of float out of connection to that, it can just feel bonkers. And it's like, but when we're in relationship to that layer of what's really taking place inside us, we realize there's this exquisite choreography of return taking place, and it's lovely to be able to keep our feet upon that path. So I love imagining that it's a facilitation of that to the maximal amount for each one, because we're not really in a time. I do share the Elven remembrance and the great ages of light and starlight and all my own remembrance. But what I really treasure is the sentience of the great flows activating within each one of us. And yeah, so that's one aspect. And then also the part of me, I mean, I love the drum and the shamanic and the elven starlight sounding, those far ways of our ancient wisdom, and it's a part of myself, my own avatar presence. I remember lifetimes of doing this. And also, I just love writing and sitting at a desk, and that sort of, that kind of geek. And Tolkien is always a great model, a role model of mine, that hobby of loving to inscribe, to write the record. And I think as each one of us is doing that, who's called to do that, Rachel and I are working with that together, your extraordinary book of Starlight Just Beyond. It's like these are the cosmologies of the age that is dawning. They need to be written for those of us who are called to do it. So I'm also supporting that, and I love that. So as Rachel knows, we're walking together with bringing through your book of Starlight, but to support a program to support those who are called to write their books of Starlight. So I hold that a couple of times a year as well for small groups. But it's so much the sense that, yeah, we can also be in the here and now enjoyment of that in our bodies. I mean, it's a really delicious thing to do. It's just gorgeous to make these things of beauty again.
Isn't it? It's just lovely to bring and create everything that, just lights you up, and there's heartfelt offering and just for yourself, and then to share. It's just such a gift, and it's such, we have to pinch ourselves every day, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually,
because it's just, I can't even find the words really to describe how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
It's just delicious. I love it.
It is.
it's just, again, coming back in simple terms, it's about you follow that heart light, and it's going to bring you to this joyful existence of just creating, that which you are over and over. And it's just, it's glorious. So anybody listening and tuning into this, just breathing into that and that emanating from other sovereign beings, it helps you to remember that and awaken that within you, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah.
And I think the more we have these conversations, the more then that the awakening just seems to accelerate more and more and more.
Yeah.
Like people are popping up everywhere. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is incredible. And it's beautiful at the same time. Like you say, these conversations are just so important, because, you can sometimes, when you come onto this path, you can feel so alone. And it's just hearing these conversations and then finding that soul family and just connecting in with all that is, you know, unfolding. Like, it's just very important.
Yeah.
That's why we love doing these tea at the temples and just getting beautiful souls on like yourself, Ellen, just to share, because it really helps everybody so much.
Yeah, just to be ourselves. That is the ultimate, ultimate thing.
Yeah. And it might be exactly that before that we thought to just keep behind a veil, like we would be with it, but we would just keep it slightly back to one side. That for me was a big one. And still dissolving that, it's like, wow, no, we can go direct. It's really this. And, you know, I just, before our call, I had the energy of Corona Borealis popping through. I was like, oh, the Elven and Corona Borealis, that star system in our galaxy. And it's like that energy is just popping up as a template almost of that directness, you know, of just really being able to play in the fields of consciousness that we are, as you say, of that one who we are over and over and over again. And there's never too much, I don't think there's too much repetition at this point, even remotely possible, for us to keep expressing and giving from there, because that's part of the core elven remembrance and of so many of the lineages of light. That's part of the joy of being on earth, is to express that which we are, to give it expression. It's part of our core longing. So to have held that back for so long is such a thing. And this is the time we change that.
I'm gonna have to excuse me one moment. Sorry, I've got hay fever. I'm going to mute myself one moment. I'm wrapped in like a rapeseed blanket at the moment, and antihistamines not helping me. And every now and again, it just feels like somebody comes with a bit of sawdust and just puts it down my throat. And, you know, just like,
and the tickle is like unbearable.
Oh, so that's better.
Bless yourself.
Oh, so picking up from where we were just talking about, obviously those sacred offerings, and obviously all of our heartfelt desires and what we bring forward, everything at the bottom of this video, and this beautiful soulful discussion with Ellen will be at the bottom, so you can access all of Ellen's offerings and be able to see obviously what she really brings forward. And you're immersed in all of that at the moment, which is truly beautiful.
It is truly beautiful. Absolutely glorious. Transfiguring as we speak. So we always ask our guests this same question, don't we, Helen?
Yes, we always like to close our conversations with this question of, if you could look back, Ellen, and as you started upon this path, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your awakening self?
Oh my gosh, I definitely have one that's coming forward. Yeah. It's like every moment that it's interesting this one is coming forward. Every moment that I went to any little side of telling the truth about how I feel and my real response to any given moment, just to have known there was never any need to go to any side of that, and to keep, you know, speaking and sharing, but also feeling from the core reality that was moving within me, because that path of light was carrying me home to source and to love in every moment. And that longing to return there, to that place, would have been most directly fulfilled by that. And whatever any other ends seemed to be fulfilled by expressing something else or giving another response at any level. Just to have trusted, to have really, really trusted how I really felt in any given moment about everything. And that, I think, would have been, in this moment, that's what's really, really coming forward. And it can be so scary that even as I speak that in that moment, it's like trusting that that is the guidance that I would give to my awakening self, trusting this moment that that is the crystalline truth of what's presenting within. It's to let the energy, the power of that flow through. You know, we're so used to slightly veiling or slightly moving to one side of this incredible light and power that we are. It's like that, to go direct, to really let that through in every moment.
I love that.
Wow. I'm just breathing that in.
Yeah.
Because that can be the challenge, especially if you navigate sort of part of the time in a very, what is considered a 3D job.
Yeah.
And then the other part of the time you are moving into what is true for you and doing what you consider to be your soul work. You do sidestep because you feel like you've got to measure yourself and dial it down. So that trusting that what is your truth and expressing that in every situation is so precious, that advice.
Yeah, and the setting that we're not enough in some way, that we're not quite okay just as we are, is so deep. And I just think gently we just need to erode that in every moment. And even when you've been awake for a time, it can still come all over again. And you think, oh my gosh, if I'm this way, is that not spiritual? Or when I fit in with this group that I'm part of, or will this energy not be good if I express this or bring this in? Like, it's so deep, that entrainment to measure ourselves continuously against something we should be. And so it's like again and again, just gently releasing that in every moment, going direct. And I think then our crystallinity of true presence gets to grow. We kind of get the hang of this again, being ourselves.
So beautiful.
That's beautiful.
A really gorgeous way to close. So we just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from us and for all who tune in and receive the beautiful wisdom that has flowed in for this episode of Tea at the Temple.
Yeah, it's been such an honour to be in your presence, Ellen, and just to listen to your words of wisdom, which have really nourished us in this moment, and hopefully all of our viewers. Thank you so much. It's been such an honour. And just, sending deepest blessings. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel so blessed to be here with you.
Thank you.